Okay, well, welcome to Yakima. I actually live in Yakima now and have done for the last 2 years, but I don't know everything about the fauna, the butterfly fauna of Yakima, or the localities, the best for butterflies, but we're learning very rapidly. It was, as I said, as Dave mentioned, it was only 10 years ago that I arrived in the States, so it's been a very, very steep learning curve to learn about the butterflies here. My career started as an entomologist by rearing butterflies. It's probably why Dave thinks I'm so good at it, because I used to do it as a kid in England, and that's when I knew I wanted to be an entomologist, and then I took my degrees and did a study on the monarch butterfly in Australia, the biology of the ecology of the monarch over there, and ultimately turned up here. And aside from my role as a professional entomologist working on biological control and integrated pest management, I rekindled my interest in butterflies when I arrived here, and so here I am. So we expect to see a good amount of butterflies this weekend. The weather's going to be perfect for us. There's been a few fires around, but they're all out now. So really, barring any unforeseen events, it should be a good weekend. Unfortunately, there are some locations we wanted to take you to that we won't be able to take you to, simply because the snow's still around. It's been a very late season here. It's sped up a bit in the last few weeks. Things are melting rapidly, but we still can't get to Bear Creek Mountain, which is one of our favourite localities and one of the best butterfly spots I've found in Yakima County, or anywhere really. You can see it's a beautiful place. This is the summit of it, and if we'd been going, we would have been down in this meadow down there. But the road is, at the best of times, it's pretty bumpy and difficult, and now it's slushy and muddy and a bit of snow. So
David, can you say a word about the orientation of what we're seeing in the background there?
We're looking northwest, so this is actually Bethel Ridge, where we are going tomorrow. Is that it then, do you think? Somewhere, one of these ridges over there is Bethel Ridge, and these Mount Aches, I know that's one of the mounts over there, and that's a very unexplored Lepidoptera area, and where we're going tomorrow, Bethel Ridge, is in the same category. We don't know much about the Lepidoptera fauna, not only me, but anybody. The rim rock's down the other side there, I think. Okay, so Yakima County is very diverse in its habitats and environments. So it ranges from Arctic alpine, 12,000 feet. Bear Creek Mountain is about 7,300 feet. Mount Adams, the east side of Mount Adams, is part of Yakima County. To Upper Sonoran, the desert, the dry area, the Yakima Valley, which in the non-irrigated areas is a desert. So there's a great variety of habitats. Precipitation ranges from 6 inches in the valley to 60 inches in the mountains, and of course there's a wide diversity of vegetation equals a wide diversity of butterflies. And there are estimates of between 103 and 118 species recorded in Yakima County, depending on who you talk to or read. As I briefly mentioned, the fauna is not fully explored, especially at high elevations. So tomorrow at Bethel Ridge, that's one of these high elevation sites that we are able to access. It's about 6,000 feet, maybe a bit more. And there's still surprises to be had, butterflies to be found that we didn't know were there. The one that I found recently was the Arctic blue at Bear Creek Mountain, which we wasn't aware of. And another one is a possible new Pontia, or western white species that I'll talk about more in a minute. So that's Bear Creek Mountain again, so I'll show you some pictures of what we won't see tomorrow. As you can see, it's a beautiful place. The meadows are just gorgeous, full of flowers, and it's if you ever get the chance to go up there, you should. We don't want to tell too many people. It's not very well known, and there's not a great deal of people up there. It's only open from about July to the end of September before it closes off again, but it's a beautiful place to visit. We won't be going there tomorrow. There was a famous Yakima lepidopterist called E.J. Newcomer, and I'm trying to find out more information about him. Because there are some parallels between him and myself. He was a government entomologist too, and he was a pioneer in Washington lepidopterology, or whatever they like to call it. He wrote a lot of papers about butterflies in this county and elsewhere in the Pacific Northwest, and a lot of information that we have on Yakima and Washington butterflies is due to him. So he was a big figure in the history of butterflies here. So Rimrock Lake, that's sort of the centre of the area where we'll be both days. Tomorrow we're going to be on the north side of the lake, which will be this side, and on Sunday on the south side. There are many habitats in this forest zone. This is down from Bear Creek Mountain. Bear Creek Mountain is up the other side over there. Grassy openings, meadows, roadsides, slopes, etc. We'll visit most of these types of habitats. It's just another meadow around Rimrock Lake. And there's a lot of impressive geologic features as well. Rocky outcrops and mini mountains that are impressive. And windy trails like that. Some of these trails actually are currently closed at the moment. Unfortunately, we're not planning to go down to any that are closed because of the fear of sparking a fire. They're closed to vehicles. And then coming further down, you come into the Garry Oak belt, and we have a lot of Garry Oak. It dries off considerably, as you can see, and we won't be spending much time in this area because of the heat and the dryness. It's really a good habitat for April to June, and thereafter it declines somewhat. This is a famous location that we thought we would go to. Newcomer did a lot of work here, and even well, let's see, Newcomer reported 36 species on a July day here in the early 60s, and he found an additional 26 species at other times of the year. So a total of 62 species just in this one canyon. Doesn't look very impressive there, but it goes up about 3 miles or more than that, 3 to 5 miles. But it's not until you get to about the 3rd mile now, in July, that it becomes more full of butterflies, greener, and there's a lot of vegetation on the side of this canyon. There's a stream that runs down that dries up during the summer, but it's still a extremely good habitat. And we've been up there a lot, and we've seen about 52 species here, so it doesn't seem to have changed a great deal since Newcomer's time. He worked in, Bob might correct me here, but I know 50s and 60s, maybe earlier than that, maybe later than that, Newcomer.
Certainly starting in the 50s, I think, and he worked well into the
70s?
Yeah, well into the 70s.
So that's one of his favourite spots. And this was also the first location, the first collecting trip with Bob and John Pelham, right?
That's true. That was in June of 1967.
There you go. So it's steeped in Lepidoptera history. However, we're not going to go up there. Unless there's people that want to hike 3 miles on Sunday, perhaps, and we could split up into 2 groups. I'll talk to Dave about that. But it is a significant hike up there to get to the sweet zone where there will be butterflies around. There's nothing really down at this level. It's not. It's a little bit of it. It's more. The elevation's not steep, but it's more of a. There was a lot of rain last year come down, and it's very rocky and uneven path.
Yeah, it's changed the path.
3 miles one way?
Yeah, 3 miles up, and then you come 3 miles back. Yeah. So it's a significant hike. It's a day trip really, and I don't think it's really a good
Even
option.
if I can mention, if anyone wants to try it, without hiking that far, go in the month of May.
Yeah.
And it's a lovely place, just in the first mile. In the
Yeah.
month of May.
It's an early spot. Another example of the impressive features. That's on the side of Bear Canyon. And then further down there's the Titan River, which flows from Rimrock. And the river canyon there is now part of the Nature Conservancy. They bought some land a few years ago, so it's preserved. It wasn't before, but it is now. And so it's prone to fires. In fact, there was a fire there just 2 days ago. unfortunately they put it out very rapidly. There was a big fire in this area about 5 years ago, and it's just beginning to recover. So we were disturbed this morning when we had a trip out there and found that this fire had burned, but they got it out just before it really caused any huge problems. But the fire people are still there watching for sparks. So you'll see them tomorrow as we go past. But it's a good area. It's now that it's regenerated. And then further down, you come to the drier sage step canyons. I think that's the best description of them, and you'll see them as we head out of Yakima and get onto 12, or just before you get onto Highway 12, you'll see these sort of hills to the side, to the right, mostly to the right. And they're very good butterfly areas too. Earlier on, you can see the balsam root flower in there, the great for swallowtails, Indra swallowtails, whole variety of species. You can walk up these canyons. There's many canyons you can walk up, and there are many butterflies you can see. But again, you wouldn't really dream of hiking up there on a July day when it's going to be 100 degrees like it is tomorrow down here. Okay, so moving on to some other Yakima features, and Bob knows all about this, and probably a lot of you do, but the Moxie Bog story, it was the first protected site for a butterfly species, but now basically is an embarrassment to Yakima and to everybody really. Pearl-bordered fritillaries, Peloria saline, were discovered here in 1973. David McCorkle, I think, discovered them in this area here, which presumably, Bob can help me here, because I wasn't around at that time, but that didn't look like that then, right? This is the fenced-off reserve. It's only like an acre or so, right?
Oh, I think it's larger than that. It's not very big.
But I presume that in 1973, that area looked much like this area down here.
Correct.
And this is what's happened. They fenced it off, and it's just overgrown. It hasn't been managed at all. They didn't know what they should be doing. I mean, nobody really told them what they should be doing, I guess. And it appears that the butterfly's not there. I mean, this is why it's embarrassing. It disappeared some time ago. I spent a couple of years now searching for it, and it's not there. It's not in that bog area. But this is all boggy, by the way. I mean, this is there's a river nearby, and they're not down here either. They're not anywhere. Cattle graze the outside areas, but not inside. The fence was put up to protect it from cattle, thinking that was the right thing to do. But apparently, grazing is something that the butterfly needed, because the butterfly larvae feed on violets, and they're basically being choked out by the willows, the woody shrubs and the reeds that are growing out here. If you search very hard in there, you can still find violets. They are there, but the butterflies presumably can't find them, or didn't find them for a while. And they're not there. The butterflies are not there.
And it said it was a huge colony. It was very abundant.
Sorry?
It was a very large colony,
okay.
too. I mean,
If you read Bob's book, he's got a very poetic piece in there about seeing them there, and it did sound like a very, very big colony, and not one. I mean, it would be hard to miss the butterflies.
Why don't they put cows back in?
Well, I mean, I have
I'll talk
mentioned.
with you about it later. It was
Yeah.
a complicated story.
It's a complicated story, and I don't know all the details of it. And I live in Yakima, and I'd like to do something about it and be involved, but I haven't done anything about it just yet, apart from find out that they're not there. I mean, the Conservancy still owns it. They still have signs up. Occasionally, this fence falls down, and cows go in there and graze, and that's where I find the violets where they've been. So, you know, if it was managed better, I mean, the butterflies are presumably gone now, but again, they may still occur in this region. There's a lot of farmland, and it's a wet area, and presumably the violets are still around, and the butterflies may exist somewhere on private property. And if they did, then we might be able to encourage them back into the zone. But yeah, so you know, grazing is what is needed to keep the violets accessible for the fritillary. And
Is that the only population of this butterfly?
in this region, that's all. There are a number of populations elsewhere.
About 20 in Washington State, but it's very rare.
And it would be nice to, I mean, we should do a survey to see whether it is totally gone from. I mean, as you know, Bob, that area around could, well, you know, there could be a colony somewhere.
Absolutely.
So somebody needs to check that at some point. But anyway, sad story because it could have been a good story. And we also, the region, Yakima has another unique butterfly, the Lucia azure, which was formerly considered the subspecies of the common azure, but I now think is recognised as its own species. And one of the best places to see it is Cowishi Canyon, which is just on the other side of Yakima. It's a unique habitat. It's very close to Yakima. The canyon itself is, and the top part of the canyon is a great area for wildflowers, and it's sort of protected by the Cowishi Canyon Conservancy. You can look them up online. They have their own website. And I told them earlier this year that they had this butterfly in the canyon that they weren't aware of, and so now they're very keen about using this as their poster child, if you like, and they're actually applying for a grant from the Yakima Valley Community Foundation to educate people about it. It's not a research program, but it's just an awareness thing, which I think is good. I mean, that's probably what was wrong with the Pearl Water Fritillary. Nobody really knew what was happening, and there was no education. So this might lead to other things, research. But you know, if you walk through this canyon in April, and I know the group has been down there a number of times. Some of you have probably seen the butterfly. It's common to see it. It's one of the best places to find the butterfly. So I hope I'll have a better outcome than the Pearl Water Fritillary story. Okay, we're moving on to this weekend's trips. Tomorrow, Bethel Ridge, as I've mentioned. This is a shot from near the top of Bethel Ridge. We've been going up there as a family for a couple of years now. We didn't actually go right to the top. And Dave last week, I told him about it, and he went right to the top, and it's incredible. It's even better than I thought. So the views that we'll get tomorrow of Mount Rainier and Mount Adams are just spectacular. I didn't realise we'd get such views so close to Yakima. And it's also, it goes into another habitat zone, a more rocky scree area, which might turn up some other butterfly species. As I briefly mentioned before, this area is very unexplored butterfly-wise. I think I'm the only person that's been up there looking at butterflies in recent years anyway. And it's only been just 2 or 3 times. So we know very little about it. We saw about 20 species there today, just in an hour. So I think the group will double that tomorrow. And I'd be very surprised if we don't find surprising species up there. So that'll be exciting for me as you as well, I hope. There's meadows up there. We're going to go to one particular meadow. This is looking back at Rimrock Lake. There's a Rimrock over there. So on Sunday we'll be going on the other side, not as high up as this, about 4,000 feet. Ridgeline meadows. There's not many of them actually. This Cache Prairie, when we were up today, right at the very top, we could see it's about the only meadow that's up there. So it's a very big meadow though, lots of flowers. This picture was taken on July 7th this year, about 10 days ago. And there's a lot more flowers out now. And it said we were there today, and there were a lot of butterflies around, dominated by field crescents and a couple of others. So the diversity is not huge. Well, it didn't seem to be in our short time there, but it may well be. But the numbers are certainly impressive, the things flying around. And that was a picture taken up there July. It was a bit earlier last season, and that's more like what it is now. A lot of this purple flower that I'm embarrassed to say I don't know, but I've only been in Washington 10 years, so I don't know. It's not lupin, no. It looks a bit like bee balm, but it's a bit bigger.
Looks like a larkspur or else a penstemon.
It could be a larkspur, could be a...
I don't think it's larkspur. There is some larkspur up there, but
Right.
this is...
Someone can tell me what it is tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah, we'll
everywhere.
go tomorrow, right?
So that's tomorrow, and then on Sunday we're going to go to Conrad Meadows, the south side of Rimrock. This is well, its main claim to fame at the moment is that it seems to be the biggest, the site of the largest population of marbled skippers that we've found in this area, you know, east of the Cascades. 1,000 were counted there on one day last year by Xerxes Society, Serena Jepson. Unfortunately, we're at the tail end of the flight period, and I've been there twice now, and I haven't seen one. So we may not see one at Conrad Meadows, but if we want to see Marden skippers, we can go up to a higher elevation site, which is near Bear Creek Mountain, before we go here on Sunday, and I think we have a good chance of seeing them up there. It's actually the first site that I found a couple of years ago where there's a small population, not 1,000, more like 20, but they are flying there. We should see them.
But David, you discovered this location too, didn't you?
Not Conrad, no.
Who
No, that
found-
was Bill. Bill was usually here. Bill Yates.
Oh, Bill, that's right, yes.
But apart from the Marden skippers, it's a pretty good. Have you been there, Bob? Conrad?
Yes, T and I have been there, but I'm afraid we were there right after quite a lot of cows, so we didn't see that much.
That's the drawback. The cows. 10 days ago, it was pretty good. It's less good now. We still saw 25 species maybe there today, all in a very small area. This here, in the larger meadow, there's been too many cows and horses. It's a very favoured place by horse people. But it still might be a good place for us to go as a conclusion to the weekend on Sunday for lunch and late morning. You'd still see some species that we don't see at Bethel Ridge tomorrow, and see quite a few species, quite a few fraternities down there. It's hard to find good spots low down at the moment, and as I said, the high spots you can't really get to, so it's a sort of a compromise. But we'll talk more, Dave and I will talk more about that, but at this point, this is looking like the place where we'll go. Back to Marden skippers, that's sort of a typical Marden skipper site. Since I found the first site a couple of years ago, you come up with sites all over the place. It's like, it is very common on the south side of Rimrock. Another thing to look out for tomorrow at Bethel Ridge is Marden skippers. Didn't see any Marden skippers, didn't see any skippers. Saw a few dusky wings, but if we find Marden skippers, it will be the most northerly site for Marden skipper. So that would be very significant for us to be able to say. And there are meadows, similar to this up there, grassy areas that it could exist in. It's just over the other side of the lake, so it could be there. But certainly the south side of the lake, almost every meadow like this has Marden skippers. So it's not endangered on the south side of Rimrock.
Nice.
There's two of the butterfly children.
Yeah, that would be great.
So there are more than 70 species we could see tomorrow. I don't think we'll see 70, it'd be a miracle if we do, but it is possible. There's 70 species that are potentially out there that we could see.
Will we see those two?
We'll see those two in spades.
In action.
I see them right now.
No, did they?
32 species I think are virtually guaranteed. I went to Bethel and Conrad today and saw 30 species. We just an hour each place and we saw 30 species. So, given us, I think we're guaranteed at least 30 species. Much more. The XLI, we have a number of species, and we have Dave Nunnally, of course, who's the genius at finding these things. There are certain things that we can find. Satyr anglewing, Milbert's tortoiseshell, we saw some larvae of these today. Western tail blue eggs, he's very good at finding. Silvery blue larvae. So, I think we're going to be looking at the dazzling array just flying around, but maybe we should spend some time looking down as well. We could find some things. As I said, when I made this slide, I thought our chances of seeing it, the Marden skipper, were better than what I think now. But the nearby site does hold promise if you want to go there. And we should look for Marden skipper in the Bethel Ridge meadows. And finally, the surprise species, as I've mentioned before. I'm quite excited about the potential of finding surprise species. So starting with the skippers, we may see 12 species of skippers, but today we saw very few skippers at all. In the last couple of weeks, all the skipper numbers seem to have dropped off quite rapidly. We did see some dusky wings. I'm not sure which species they were, didn't catch them. This is the one most likely to see, the dreamy dusky wing. By the way, the pictures I'm showing are mine, unless I put up DN, which means it's Dave's picture. So yeah, the little black dusky wings flying around, especially on Bethel Ridge. I'd like to know which ones are actually living up there. It'd be good to catch them and identify them. The Perseus dusky wing, we might see that up there too. when they're flying, you really don't know what you have. They're all a very similar size, the ones that we're going to see now. Earlier in the spring, in the Gary Oak area, we would have seen the Perpetuous or Oak Dusky Wing. It's quite common down there, and that's much larger, but that flight period is finished now. And probably least likely Vesuvius Dusky Wing is possible. It's actually quite hard to tell these dusky wings apart, even to the trained eye, and I'm glad that Bob's here and the other experts that have been here longer than 10 years, because you need longer than 10 years to understand these things, I think. But if you look at the larvae, there are some things that give them away straight away, like their heads. You just have to look at their heads. They all have different heads, just like people. So you can, if you rear them, you know what they are. There's Isolus, Vesuvius, Perseus, and Perpetuous, which is the oak dusky wing, which has the biggest head and the brightest colour.
Does that mean we have to find a caterpillar before we can do
Well,
that?
no, this is for academic sake. If you'd like to rear them, just to prove the species that you think you have. The two-banded checkered skipper is possible. I haven't seen that in my checking out trips. If we'd gone to Bear Creek Mountain, we'd have definitely seen it. There's a good population up there, and this is the picture the big picture is of that. And I still have my suspicions about it being a slightly different race or species, subspecies from the lowland populations. And when we reared them, Dave reared the lowland population and I reared the alpine population, and there was significant difference in coloration, even down to egg colour, as I recall. And also, the high elevation population will feed on vaccinium, which is an unknown host for it on lowland, where they feed on, remind me.
All kinds of rose family.
Rose family stuff, cinquefoils and stuff. So vaccinium was a very strange thing for it to feed on, so yeah, that needs more investigation. The common checkered skipper, you'll probably find that around the hotel before we leave. Seriously, that's common in our backyard here in Yakima, and we see it less often in the mountains. Most of the ones I've seen have been in lowland disturbed areas, but we could still see it up there. And in a similar vein, the northern white skipper is very similar but larger, and most commonly seen at lowland sites. But again, we could possibly see it up there. And again, the third one in the same category, common sooty wing, mostly in lower elevation sites, disturbed areas. And the western branded skipper, that's beginning its flight period now, or it should be. Have you seen any, Dave, yet? You've seen a few. I haven't seen any yet, but it should be. I mean, that's the newly emerged individual, and freshly coloured.
David and I had about a week ago at Palaka, and they were
Okay.
On the way down to Yakima up at Reeser Creek, they're flying all over the place now.
Right, so they should be out at Conrad and Bethel.
that's good.
Back to Marden skipper again. If we see them, we might have trouble differentiating them from Sonora skipper. So it's good that we have Bob here to help us with that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they can be confused, especially when they're worn. And the Sonora, well, the Mardens are worn, and now today I saw a Sonora that was very worn too. So if they're all worn, then we are in trouble. But this is Marden. The markings are pretty crisp and distinct, and I don't know. It's probably best to. They're also darker too. When they're flying, they appear to be a brown skipper, sort of tending towards a brown skipper, where Sonora is more orange. They're also smaller too. Sonora tends to be bigger.
Don't you find, David, that the wings just feel stubbier when you look at them?
Yeah, stubbier forewings. So it's a number of factors that combine to allow us to differentiate them. Not all easy. So this is the site that we could go to on Sunday morning before we go to Conrad Meadows and have a good chance of seeing Marden skippers, because it's a higher elevation. And this is the date actually that I found them on a few years ago. So we might go up there if we want to see them. And this is the Sonora skipper. So you can see it's very similar markings. This one's a bit smudged here. The white or the yellow marking should continue there. So it's a more sort of smooth, round marking shape, but you see the orange, more orange coloration. 10 days ago at Conrad Meadows, they just emerged, they're fresh. And so I was fully expecting them to see good populations now. Maybe we will, maybe I just saw one old individual, but we will definitely see Sonora skipper at Conrad Meadows, even if we don't see Marden skipper. Woodland skipper is another, it's probably probably the commonest skipper, and everybody's seen them. They're just beginning to emerge now. Again, I haven't seen one, but I know Dave has, probably we have, other people have. And we'll probably see them on Bethel Ridge if not in Conrad Meadows. And in a few weeks' time, they're all the skippers you see generally around here. The common roadside skipper, quite likely to see that around Conrad Meadows. Very difficult to see, very fast, and it's probably commoner than people realise. There's a couple of moths out there today I noticed too that look a bit like, they fly much slower, but they're skipper-like black moths. Well, I don't know what they are, but people will be confused by them probably. Okay, moving on to Parnassians and swallowtails. We're probably going to see about 7 species. Clodius, we saw this today at both sites. It's well into its flight period, so I think this is a guaranteed species. And the most likely one to be seen. And the identification really between this and the mountain Parnassian, which I'll show next, is the solid black antennae compared to the other species which has black and white banded antennae. This individual has the sphagus here, this is a female, and the male leaves that behind so she can't mate with any other males.
Are red spots on the forewings a good indicator?
Yeah, they're a good indicator too. But I tend to just go to the antennae. And that's the other species. We can just about see the black and white. I haven't seen any of these up at Bethel Ridge yet, but it could be there. It's certainly the right habitat for it. Plenty of sedum, which is the host plant for the larvae around. Swallowtails, I didn't see any mudding clubs today, but certainly plenty of swallowtails. And Alice swallowtail, we saw a few of those at the top of Bethel Ridge. They look fresh, actually, surprising. The season's very, only just started up there. It's, a couple, as you saw in that early picture 10 days ago, the flowers weren't even out. It's really at the beginning of its season, so they're probably newly emerged, first generation. But at lower levels you'll find the larvae. I found larvae just down the road here. But up there, they've just emerged and flying around looking very fresh. Indra might be in the same bag. I haven't seen that up there, but it's possible to be up there. And these are the larvae with some different forms of larvae. Again, you can find these on Limation. We're guaranteed to see the tiger swallowtail, of course, the western tiger swallowtail. We'll probably see that while we're driving there, just down the road. And ironically, as you know, Dave and I have been working on this book, rearing all the species for many years now, and I still haven't reared the species. Embarrassed to say. We certainly can't get them to lay eggs in captivity.
Really?
Well, I don't know anybody that's succeeded. They tend to batter themselves within a day or so. And so you have to find eggs, and I haven't been lucky enough to. Well, I did find eggs once, but they were parasitized. So if anyone finds eggs, they'll be happy to take them from and rear them. The pale swallowtail is also common, and we'll see that. And the same thing, I haven't reared this species, but it's guaranteed that we'll see this, very common. And here's some male swallowtails. I like this slide. They look like jets on the runway or something, waiting to take off, but they're feeding on imbibing the minerals and salts to enhance their reproductive capabilities. When they mate, they lose a lot of their salts and sodium, so they need to replenish so they can mate again. You can see how fat the bodies get. It's only males that you find doing this. The females don't, obviously, don't need to. The two-towered swallowtail. It's less common in the mountains than it is in Yakima. We actually have a few flying around our garden. We have a chokecherry tree, and they come round and entertain us by just the males come around looking for the females, and the females come around to lay eggs, and so it's good. But we could see them up there, very large, of course, one of the largest species in the US, second largest species, I think. Okay, moving on to the next family, whites and sulphurs, the Sierridae. This is the pine white, and this is what they'll be at the moment, so you can all go looking for these tomorrow. Then I spent years trying to rear this species, and we were very proud to be able to say we finally cracked it this year. And we managed well, Dave climbed trees at one point looking for eggs and stuff. And, it's hard to get them to lay eggs. It's even harder for the eggs to survive the winter. They overwinter as eggs, and it's quite a lot of larval mortality too. But I managed to get one individual through. I think it was just one. And this is the pupa here. So we've got the life cycle covered now.
Is that the one that you got through? You had the enclosure on that one?
Yep.
It looks like there's a hole in the
What, they're here?
Yeah.
No, that is, doing this rearing, we find features that we don't know what they are. And we're so busy, we haven't researched them. I mean, a lot of pupae have this black process. It's not a hole, it's a black mark there that I think is an auditory thing, or a stridulatory thing, or makes a noise, or it hasn't, skippers have them quite prominently. So it's something that I haven't had time to find out what exactly it is. But we did find interesting things with the larvae of these things. They have ventral glands that, like fritillaries do, and they have them in the third instar, but then they seem to lose them later on. You rear these things, you learn a lot.
Does the pupa lay horizontal?
No, that was just for the photograph. I put that like that. It's usually head up.
The hatch pupae that I found were
Well, like this. Okay. Yeah, Dave found a couple of hatched pupae last year. Okay.
I found hatched pupae in Spokane in a mass flight, and they were horizontal. But then that was just the orientation of the needles on the ponderosa plant.
Right. Actually, yes. I think mine was like this as well. It was on the spray of pine, and it was just hanging down the other way round. Yeah. Okay, so they're mostly pupae at the moment. I haven't seen. Have you seen a pine white yet, Dave? Anybody? No. So, especially at Bethel Ridge, it's going to be too early. Down lower, they're probably getting very close to emerging. But this is the life cycle we're proud to present. There's the eggs, very unique eggs laid sort of like that. I've tried overwintering in many different ways in cold rooms and fridges, and this year I had them outside on the pine tree, and that worked as well. But it also worked in the cold room this year, 40-degree Fahrenheit room. It's the first instar, second instar, third, fourth, and fifth as you go down. So they're not particularly dramatic larvae, but it was good to finally be able to rear them in the end. And they have a gland under here that seems to be a defensive gland that secretes a secretion that they'll probably use to repel ants or something. Okay, so moving on to the marbles, and surprisingly, we're going to see marbles tomorrow. And, yeah, this is a spring species that we find in the Sage Steppe Canyons in April and May, but they're still flying up at Bethel Ridge. And I found the large marble there last year, Orsonites, and today I'm pretty sure I found desert marbles.
Really?
I need somebody to confirm that, but they're very small. The patterning is much more like desert marble than the large marble, so they may be both flying there. We're certainly going to see one of them tomorrow, because they're quite common. And it's quite remarkable, they're still flying in mid-July. But it just shows you how retarded the season is up there. Margin white, I haven't seen that up there yet, but that's a possible species we could see. Cabbage white was actually up there, it's probably my next slide, is it? Yes, it is. Yeah, the cabbage white was up there, which was quite surprising. Obviously more common in the valley, but there's a population up there, newly emerged, and no reason to think they come up from downslope. probably living up there. Okay, Western white, we might see that. We would definitely have seen that on the other side of Rim Rock, but it's quite possible. Possibly occurs up on Bethel Ridge. It's probably one of the species I haven't seen up here yet, but we could see tomorrow. And then I just digress a little bit to the mystery species that I hoped we were going to investigate up at Bear Creek Mountain this year. As I told you, we won't be going up there. This is it, but it looks like Western white. This is the species I reared. It looks like Occidentalis, which is the Western white, but I reared this from this caterpillar, or from these caterpillars that look like this, which, as you can see, are very similar to Becker's white. Nothing at all like Western white.
Isn't that weird?
Totally weird. And then they turned into pupae. This is the pupa of it,
Oh my gosh.
compared to the Becker's
That's
white.
amazing.
And there's the Western white. And funny enough, I didn't even realise this. We're rearing all these species and just taking the pictures and filing away. And it wasn't until Dave and I put in all the stuff together and we realised that our Western white files were totally different. And
Pupa's astonishing.
I've racked my brains many times to find a reason why this could happen, or some error that I made, but I can't come up with it. I mean, apparent Western whites, I caught Western whites on the highest slopes of Bear Creek Mountain. This is at 7,000 feet, where my first picture was taken, right at the top. These apparent Western white, this is a Becker's white, but Western whites, took them home, they laid eggs, they produced these larvae and pupae, which were identical to Becker's white, and they produced butterflies which were apparently Western whites. I mean, I've got the photographic evidence for
Should
it.
you go back to the adults, please? Basic Western one?
Is that similar to Paris mayflies?
No. It's in the other genus, the Pontias, that are similar to the checkered whites and the Western whites.
I thought it was
It's related to Becker's, but as you see, it's very different.
but it's a lot of yellow there, but that's within the range of variation you
Yeah,
see.
with females especially.
I mean, I've seen some much less yellow than that, like in the previous slide, I think, like there. See? So they are, but this is freshly emerged. I took pictures of my newly emerged Western white, and not realising that the intermediate stages were actually Becker's white. So and I was rearing them in Benton City. I lived in Benton City at the time, and thought about, I was using tumble mustard. Did I bring in tumble mustard that had Becker's on? There were no Becker's flying at that time, and it wasn't just one I reared. I reared 25 or something.
So they're significant flies.
David, share with the group what Art Shapiro's comment
I
was.
can't even remember the details of that. Now, what did he say?
Oh, there was some quotation from Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, I told him this story. Art Shapiro, a very well-respected butterfly biologist, and he just thought it was a story out of Alice in Wonderland, and it's more credible that rabbits gave birth to guinea pigs or something. He was just threw his hand up in the air and doesn't believe it. So I'm left with a dilemma here. We've got a file for our book for mystery Western white that we haven't resolved, and last year, and I can't remember if it's 2006 or 2005 this happened. I think for a couple of years now I've been unable to catch the whites again, to rear them again. I caught males last year, didn't get females. So again this year we'll be trying, and I was hoping we'd all be up there so we could all catch Western whites or alleged Western whites, and so I could repeat what I did before and keep the material. I obviously didn't keep the material. We should be looking at this DNA-wise, etc., to resolve it if this story is true. But I still
What did you rear them on?
have to do it. Sorry,
What did you rear them on?
a tumble mustard.
Is that what both of them?
Yeah, both of them will feed on that. So assuming I haven't made some gross error somehow, it is possible that the population up there, the Bear Creek Mountain population, is not Western white, but instead an alpine population of Becker's white. That was my immediate thought. I mean, there's some other explanations too. I mean, Becker's white with an adult phenotype identical to the Western white. But there are other explanations, you can probably think of them, but I obviously need to resolve this. And I'm 98, 99% sure I haven't made a mistake. I can't improve it beyond what I've shown here until I rear it again and do it all over again. So that's the story at the moment. So it's not impossible that there's a new species right at the top there. So if we see any western whites tomorrow, be sure to catch them just in case they're a female. It's the same thing maybe at Bethel Ridge, who knows. Okay. Yeah, it's a good picture, isn't it? They actually won, I'm embarrassed to say, won an award at the Entomological Society. So we got $50 for that picture.
Yes.
The butterfly's still flying at Conrad Meadows. Well, it was 10 days ago. Jasmine called it Sarah Orange to again, so it could be flying up at Bethel Ridge too. Orange sulphur is up there. We saw that today. That picture's a bit distorted, so the shape of the wings is a bit funny. And also clouded sulphur's probably up there. I didn't actually catch that today. The commonest sulphur up there is the western sulphur. In fact, the Rimrock area generally, it's having a very good year. It's everywhere. Most sulphurs you see will be western sulphurs. It's just a couple of the stages there. It's another species we've reared recently. Coppers, hair streaks and blues. So we like to see 4 coppers, only 3 hair streaks. It's not a very good area for hair streaks. We might prove that wrong, particularly up at Bethel Ridge. I saw a few things today flying that I didn't catch that could have been hair streaks. I didn't know what they were. So hopefully we'll increase the number from 3, but 9 blues we're likely to see. I don't think we'll see this one though. Its population seemed to be declining just in the time that I've been looking around Rimrock. Used to see quite a lot. Bear Canyon was a good place for them. But I haven't seen any this year so far, and be pleased if we can see them tomorrow. But,
David, if anyone would like to see a recent extinction, that was an abundant butterfly at the Wild Rose campsite on the Tide River Canyon. And last year they, for some reason, designated that a spoil site.
right.
Made it a day-use site and totally dumped all kinds of crap all over it. They totally devastated the area.
There's one of the reasons why it's declining in the Rimrock area then.
That was from that landslide. There was a
Is that where that was
landslide
from?
that went in front of the, and blocked the road to go over to the west side.
I see.
In front of that tunnel. And all of that stuff came down to that Wild Rose
You
area.
would have thought there was some other
And
place
then they
that
moved
could
it on. Well, they were constantly dumping it and moving it.
I see.
It's still closed off.
That's
You can't
why.
actually go in.
I see.
Okay, we're definitely going to see this species. It's very common in Conrad Meadows. Very nice copper. And that's the underside.
Pictures.
And the lilac bordered copper is possible. I can't say I've seen it in the last 2 trips there. And again, it's another species that appears to be declining in the Rimrock area. I used to see quite a lot of them. I now go to the Blue Mountains if I want to see lilac bordered coppers. Mariposa copper, we're definitely going to see. It's in Conrad Meadows. They've very recently emerged and in pretty good condition. Sooty hair streak, I caught one of these today, so they're in Conrad Meadows as well. They can be confused with blues. They're honorary blue, if you like. And sometimes the markings, the one I saw in Conrad Meadows today had these markings were more pronounced. The higher up you go, the more clear they are. There's a population, the less marked they are. The population at Bear Creek Mountain is very, hardly has anything on it at all. It's just a little brown butterfly. It's actually a hair streak.
Is this a new species?
Yeah, it used to be fuliginosum, and it's now semiluna.
It's an official new species.
It is. It's in the Pelham catalog as a separate species. The Semiluna was considered a subspecies of the sooty hair streak. It's been separated out as a distinct species. It's the one we have. And in fact, the common name is different too. Sooty hair streak applies to fuliginosum.
Okay.
And this one should properly be called now as one of those wonderful common names, the half-moon hair streak.
Where's the half moon on it?
Well, it's a transliteration of the scientific name.
Just pull it out of the hat?
No, it's a transliteration of the scientific name.
I know, but is there a half moon on the hair
I have
tree?
no idea what the scientific name was given for. Perhaps the one that was
Where it
first
was
described
found.
had a distinct
Yeah,
evidence.
if,
The location,
Yeah.
where it was found.
it's possible they did.
I looked
Yeah,
out
Some
I read that.
But it sounds good, doesn't it?
Okay, this is a hair street that can turn up anywhere and does. I mean, even here at the hotel you find this. We're quite likely to see that anywhere, Conrad or Bethel. Probably newly emerged like that one at Bethel. And the California hair street, that definitely occurs around Rin Rock and could be found in Bethel. In Conrad Meadows. And
Oh,
there's
my.
mud in common blues, water wire blues. We'll see them, but that's just, I'll show you the proper picture in a minute. But Arrowhead blue should be fine on Bethel Bridge. It could be one of the surprises that we find tomorrow. It's certainly at higher elevations on the south side of the lake. At Bear Creek Mountain it's common. So we're quite likely to see it up there. It might be a little bit early perhaps. Maybe we could look for antitended larvae on lupines up there. They can often be found along with silvery blues. Silvery blue, closely related species, that should be flying at Bethel. I didn't see it today, but it should be up there. Again, antitended larvae. Particularly in Conrad Meadows perhaps, where the season's passed for this species. And now to a very confusing collection of blues that I throw my hands up at, and I had really not spent enough time learning about them. I deferred to Dave, and I'm sure Bob knows much more about them than I do. So we are, actually there's three possible species we could see, but I think we're late in the flight period for all three to actually have a good chance of seeing them. So we may not have to worry about identifying them, but they are difficult to identify. They're all very similarly marked with these dots. But this is the commonest one, the Columbian blue, which is a species in the Enoptes complex, a dotted blue, and feeds on at least a couple of buckwheats, probably more. And it's probably the one we're most likely to see, but again, it's fairly late in the flight period. We might see it up on Bethel Ridge or halfway up. Or yes. You saw it on Oak Creek? Down at the bottom? Oh, really? Okay, well, it's possible then we could see them Conrad. And this was a species separated from the previous species fairly recently, and Bob actually found it on the south side of Rin Rock, along the road that we're going to be going on to Conrad Meadows on Sunday. It feeds on, the larvae feed on one species of buckwheat called Erigonum, whatever you call it, nudum. We have different ways of saying it. But the nude, is it nude buckwheat, naked buckwheat, or whatever? I'll show you a picture of the flowers. There you go. On the
David,
side.
if I could just, before you change that picture,
Yep.
I could make one emendation. It should say TLP RMP because Tia,
Okay.
although we sussed it out together and both went there, she caught the first one, and
Did
she
you
always,
really?
and she always does.
Sorry.
No problem.
So this was added at that time to our fauna, so that's an additional species. But it's very localized. It's, as I said, feeds only on this buckwheat, this is the road. It's probably the spot you found it at.
Yeah, it's exactly the same, yes.
The buckwheat is flowering lovely at the moment. I mean, it's very easily spotted. Sorry? It's called nudum, or naked, or nude
Are you
buckwheat.
serious?
Because the leaves are very tiny at the base of the plant, you can hardly see them, so it's just got these inflorescences. And there's actually some of this up on Bethel Ridge that Dave and I noticed the other day, near the top. So this species might actually occur up there. I mean, it usually occurs where the host plant is. But again, it's the flight period that Dave has recognised it as, between mid-June to early July. I don't think we've seen it after July the 3rd. So we may be too late. It might be worthwhile us stopping on the side of the road and have a quick, I'm sure you'd like to for old time's sake. And there's another shot of the plant. It's Last year it didn't flower like this. It was much more harder to find, but now you can't miss the buckwheat. So the host plant is there, if not for the butterfly. And the final Euphalotes is doesn't really have hasn't been described properly yet, right? I mean, we call it Euphalotes on Heracleoides, which is a buckwheat species. What's the common name of Heracleoides? Parsnip flower, buckwheat, leaf, buckwheat, whatever. And so it's associated with that. And I don't think we're likely to see that, are we, Dave?
Yeah,
We could see it? Okay. But it's fairly late in the flight period, so... But there's certainly, that buckwheat is around where we'd be going, both at Conrad and on Bethel Ridge in particular. And so... Okay. This has a more prominent orange or wider orange band. Is that right? That's one of the key. Okay, other blues. Melissa blue. Again, more likely to see that lower elevations that we're probably not going to be visiting. But it's possible somewhere up Bethel Ridge we could find them. Usually in disturbed habitats. The most common blue that we're going to see, or the blue we're going to see most of tomorrow is this one, the greenish blue. 10 days ago in Conrad it was just everywhere. Now it's down to not very many, but at Bethel Ridge it's just beginning its flight period, I think. So there's a lot of them. This is the male, the bluish, whitish. The female is a darker, sort of browny colour. When it's flying it looks like a little hair streak or something, quite dark. And the females were quite common at Bethel Ridge today. They feed, or they lay their eggs on clover. There's plenty of clover around, and we actually saw them laying eggs on clover heads. And there's so many around that you'll probably see that. The same story with the field crescent. There's so many of them around. There's a lot of females, and you can see females looking for host plants and trying to lay eggs. But yeah, you'll see plenty of this blue. And this is the common blue, or blood of wine blue, Caryoides. Very common species, common at lower elevations and at high elevations. And it is currently out at Bethel Ridge. So we'll definitely see that. The markings are very variable too, and so there can be confusion between this and the half-moon hair streak. Sometimes these markings are very vague and faint, and sometimes the markings on the half-moon hair streak are much bolder, and so there's an overlap there. You know, they do fly differently, and they've got lots of behavioural differences, but to the uninitiated you can easily confuse the two. And often they occur together as well. And this is the lupine blue, which despite its name feeds on buckwheat, so you don't want to trust common names. Lupini. Yeah, buckwheats. Did you see this today, Dave?
No.
I think we saw it at Conrad 10 days ago, so it's definitely possibly to be seen. One of the characteristics of it is these scintillae, the sort of sparkling blues is another name for these things, good name. This sort of sparkling area. And they feed, this species, that's a mountain population in the Rimrock area that is associated with the same host, the Euphalotes, the Enoptes blue, is associated with the Newdon buckwheat. So we could see this blue around that too. Is the flight period for this current, Dave?
I'm not sure how long the flight period is.
I think there's an early one and a late one, right? So we might
We
not.
don't know. There's no key records. It's not like that.
So anyway, this is something to, if we see blues like this, then we'll have to look long and hard to determine whether they're Atmon or Lupini.
Do they have specific buckwheat hosts?
This one seems to be in the mountains associated with just Newdon. Haven't we found it on Elatum too?
No.
No? So it's just Newdon.
And the other one?
The other one has a number of buckwheat hosts, at least 2 or 3.
They do overlap.
They do overlap. yeah.
But interestingly, at different elevations, the Akmon will also feed on legumes, even on the introduced lotus that creeps up the roadsides. I've seen in the Yale Reservoir and
Which
that.
is around Rimrock too, that lotus is
And
there.
then on Blackdown, way down on the Straits of Fucus. So, but the lupini, on the other hand, is always on buckwheat.
So for tomorrow, when we're looking at these buckwheats, how would you distinguish between nudum and elatum?
Well, elatum still has leaves, good sized leaves. I mean, that's probably the simplest way.
Okay.
And it's a much bigger plant too. The inflorescences could be, this high, whereas the nudum is down knee height.
Now, are the leaves at the base or are they on the stems on elatum?
Are they on stems?
They're basal.
Basal.
It's a
Okay.
basal, yeah.
Both, but the elatum looks like nudum on steroids.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
that's a good description. Western Town Blue, that's certainly up there, Bethel Ridge, and probably in Conrad Meadows too. But when the individuals get a bit worn, it can be difficult to tell what they are. They can be just completely free of markings, and that little tail there is the giveaway that even that disappears eventually. So they can be a confusing species, but they're usually very white, very light coloured underside. Okay, moving on to the Nymphalidae, fritillaries. Oh, I'm taking my time. We could expect to see about 6 species, and this is one we probably won't see. Spangled fritillary, it's not very common. In the Yakima area, we see a few, but not many, and I haven't seen any in the last couple of years in this region. So we'll be very fortunate to see this. Again, it's another decline in species probably. The previous one was, well, it's male, I think, and this is the female, very different upper side, and the male down in the lower picture there. Beautiful butterflies, you've probably all seen elsewhere. It's always great to see it flying around. This one we definitely will see, Hydaspes fritillary, saw it today. One of the commonest fritillaries to identify from its coloration, just the disc being that colour, purplish, sort of brownish. I don't want to get into describing the coloration of fritillaries, it's a minefield, but we'll see this species. Coronis we'll also see, and this is a very interesting species, and it's one of my favourite species, and if I ever get a chance to do some pure butterfly research, it's one that I'll target, I think, because it has an altitudinal migration in the Yakima area. It starts the season off low down and then moves right up to Bear Creek Mountain to the top and then back down again. The adults merge in April and May down here in the sage steppe. They mate, then the females fly upslope. And just a few weeks ago, back in June or late May, I actually witnessed migration of these butterflies flying through the Rimrock area, through meadows, sitting on flowers feeding, and then flying off in a sustained westerly movement upslope. All female, 100% female, no males. The males were left behind in the sage steppe, wondering where all the females had gone. Presumably they'd been mated. And interestingly now, the males are following. The ragged bits of males are following up. Because I saw some today that just had, like 3 wings. They're up at Bethel Ridge, and the females are there too, and trying to avoid them. So the males eventually caught up. But the females spend the summer at 6,000–7,000 feet because that's where the flowers remain during the summer. They're not breeding, they're reproductively dormant, they don't lay their eggs. Fritillaries overwinter as eggs, they just lay the eggs and the eggs overwinter. And if they laid them in May, June, obviously desiccation would occur, they wouldn't survive the summer. So they hold on to the eggs until late summer or autumn, and then they fly back down. And so we see them back down here in Yakima in the sage steppe areas, on Tanum Canyon, Cowishi Canyon. They lay the eggs around the violet, what's it called, sagebrush violet, it's their favourite host. So you had this life cycle, this migration. And to me, it's every bit as fascinating as the monarch flying to Mexico and back, and it's going up to Bear Creek Mountain and back. So there's potential for tagging them. I tagged 15 this year.
Wow.
So make sure you catch one.
That's
Just
great.
to see a number.
The odds are against it, but 1 to 16, wasn't it? So anyway, grad student 1 year may be lucky enough to do this work.
What is the mark?
it's just number 1 to 16.
Did you mark them, or
Yeah,
what
with
did
felt.
you take?
No, actually felt tip pen
Sharpie.
marked sharply on here.
If we're around and we caught one that had the mark, we kill it and send it to you?
No.
Well, no, you just let it go and tell me what the number was and where you caught it. I mean, you're not going to find it, but you know, it's like winning the lottery, probably. But you know, in the future, I really would like to do this in a proper systematic way, and actually, I mean, the evidence so far, what I've just described, is anecdotal, really. I mean, yeah, John.
Do you know, since they've already made it, are the eggs fertilized initially, or are they just holding on to the sperm and fertilized later?
That's one of the unanswered questions. I don't know, and whether the males, some of them do actually survive and come back as well, and whether they mate up there as well, and whether they mate more than once. These are all questions I don't know the answers to.
And David, some other species of fritillaries, the females estivate during the summertime
Which is what these do.
in the lowland. But I mean, in the
Oh,
same,
right,
in the
yeah.
lowlands.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, these go up higher.
yeah, that's
Literally at the top of Bear Creek Mountain, you know, in August, and there's the only flowers to be seen is right at the top ridge. You know, there's phlox still flowering at that time, and there's clusters of these fritillaries just on them. Anyway, so that's Coronis, and we will see these. We saw them today on Bethel Ridge, along with Hydaspes and also, not Mormon, we'll see these in Conrad, but Zerini was on the top of Bethel Ridge too. I'm not sure they do the same sort of thing, but it's possible. So it's Hydaspes, Zerini, and Coronis up there. There's probably Mormonia, Mormon fritillary up there as well, but we're more likely to see this in Conrad Meadows. So you get the silvered form, but you also get the unsilvered form. There seem to be quite a few unsilvered ones, and they're more greener on the underside in Conrad Meadows this year. Serini and Calippi fritillary, they also saw some of these on Bethel Ridge today. And again, they may do a similar, and there's some anecdotal evidence that they do a similar thing to Coronis, fly up slope and then back again in the spring. The lesser fritillaries, Western Meadow fritillary, you'll definitely see that common in in Conrad Meadows, maybe Bethel Ridge. This is one that we could see at Bethel Ridge, but it might be a little bit early. But maybe in a few weeks' time it could be up there. The Arctic fritillary, quite distinctive, easily recognised from its sister species, which is the Western Meadow fritillary. And then the checker spots and crescents, lots of checker spots. Northern checker spot, I'm not even sure. Again, we have one of these confusing situations where we have a similar species. And this is the one we're most likely to see around here, although mostly at lower elevations and flight period is probably almost past. This species possibly occurs around here too. I didn't see any today, but it's very difficult to tell between the two species. So I'm not even sure if the northern checker spot actually occurs around here because of the confusion now with the sagebrush checker spot. It definitely does occur in the Blue Mountains. There's different flight period, they overlap a bit, but you can tell mainly through that. But actually identifying, separating them, well, the females you can separate readily between the two species better than the males, but I'm not sure if it actually occurs here at all. You don't think it is. And as I say, we're probably a bit late for this, mostly at lower elevations. We could possibly see it in Conrad Meadows. I think I saw it there 2 weeks ago, so Hoffman's checker spot, I saw that at Conrad Meadows today. It's a species I'm not very familiar with, but I definitely saw it there today, so we're probably going to see that one. Field crescent, we're going to see lots of these at Bethel Ridge. A lot of them are very small. I mean, they vary a lot in size, populations, and the population up there is very small, I think, compared to what I've seen in Blue Mountains and some other places. But males and females are abundant and all over the place. Minor crescent, another one of these species that can turn up anywhere, high elevation, low elevation, mostly lower, but we could see it, Conrad Meadows in particular. Snowberry checker spot, we're going to see that, that's definitely up at Bethel Ridge. Down in Conrad Meadows, it's warm and towards the end of the flight period, so less likely to see many there. But at Bethel Ridge, plenty. And Edith's checker spot, they're just beginning the flight period up at Bethel Ridge, so there's plenty of them up there. So there's plenty of checker spots and crescents up there, but they're the bulk of what's flying, but only comprising 2 or 3 species. Moving on quickly to the angle wings and ladies, nymphalids, 10 species we could see. Again, these are sort of hit and miss. We may see them, we may not. It's getting towards the time that get a new generation of the commas or angle wings, so we may be lucky enough to see some new ones, or old generation individuals which are getting very ragged now. And we could also find larvae in nettles. There's one spot we might stop at where there's some nettle leaves, you could find larvae. The green comma occurs in the rimrock area, could find that at Conrad Meadows. Newly emerged individuals have a great degree of green. This is a worn individual, post-overwintering. The new ones are very brightly coloured and green, very, very attractive. And that's what we'd see if we'd see new ones, which we're more likely to see than old ones at this point. The females are a bit different, a bit plainer. The hoary commas probably more likely to see. They get probably older specimens that are worn. They have this hoary appearance, frosted looking appearance. It can be difficult to tell angle wings apart, of course, and there's a number of characteristics you need to look at. We don't have time to tell you about all these now, but we're probably not going to see many. I saw one of these today, which is one of sort of the most uncommon comma, and it does occur at Bethel Ridge. And I saw a male today that was old generation feeding on mud. So if we're lucky enough, we could see these. And that one was still in reasonably good condition. With such a high elevation, I guess these things could be in reasonably good condition.
Dave, was the one you saw today about like that, or was it blacker than that?
No, it was about like that, or slightly less dark than that. But I like your mark of that all the aureus I've seen have had the symmetrical fine bird shape there. But the darkness is the key for the aureus comma, particularly the inner part of the wings. Once you see an aureus comma, if it's in good condition, it's hard to mistake. But often when they're warm, it's more difficult. Okay, California tortoiseshell. We're definitely going to see these. Jasmine has been sitting there waiting for this point.
That's great.
Feeding on horse dung. Mostly new generation now. There might be a few old generation, but mostly new generation. And we're going to see them flying. And a couple of weeks ago, up in the Blue Mountains, at a very high, actually not far from where we went last year with the group, there was lots of tortoiseshells flying, and they were all females, 100% females, heavily laden. We've already reared this species for the book, and I wasn't particularly interested in rearing it again, but Jasmine insisted I bring this fat female home that she caught. And so I did, and I didn't have any ceanothers, but we had a little California ceanothus growing in the garden, so I caged the butterfly over the ceanothus, and the next morning they were laying eggs. She said it looks like a bunch of grapes, which it does. I mean, just hundreds of eggs. So the bottom line is we have a lot of California tortoiseshell caterpillars. So seriously, if anyone's interested in a couple of California tortoiseshell caterpillars to take home, and you can grab ceanothus tomorrow, see Jasmine afterwards, and she'll take your name now. Or you can write your name in her little book that she's got.
I thought that was a bunch of grapes from your viticulture research.
I could actually show that to the grape growers, and they're probably it's a very strange looking bunch of grapes. But yeah, so if you're interested in rearing California tortoiseshell caterpillars, they're third instart at the moment, so they're reasonable size. You can almost pick them up, and they develop extremely rapidly. You need to take quite a bit of ceanothus back with you, or if you have access to it, and you'll have some fresh, you'll be able to rear California tortoiseshells. Morning cloaks, one of Dave's slides that I borrowed, and the colours there are pretty spectacular. And this is a newly emerged individual, I believe, he reared a couple of years ago, and that's what we might see if we're lucky enough, the new generation emerging. Again, this is another species that around here seems to have I mean, they have these oscillations in abundance, but certainly at the moment it's not as abundant as it was a couple of years ago. I remember telling Bob about the thousands and hundreds of sea up there canyon. There's none up there now. You know, you go up there, you don't see any. So I don't know what's happening, but elsewhere you can see them. Milbert's tortoiseshell, as I mentioned, there's some larvae on nettles you can find. The new generation probably hasn't emerged yet, but you know, lower in Conrad Meadows, it's possible we might see some new generation. I like the name fire rim tortoiseshell for this species. It reminds me of the species in England that I first studied as a kid, called the tortoiseshell butterfly over there. Okay, painted lady, Jasmine caught one of these today. The new generation has emerged from the generation that came up earlier in the year from California, and even some of these individuals are looking a bit tatty now, so we might have a third generation development, so we could look for them on thistles, the larvae. We're probably going to see this species. Red admirals, they're flying around Yakima at the moment. We've got a couple in the garden, and I think I saw one today flying very fast. They could find their larvae on the nettles too. Lorquin's admiral, guaranteed.
Go back to that dorsal picture for a second. To look at, delectate on it for a moment longer. Thank you very much.
There's one of my favourites too. The Lorquins, which is guaranteed. And finally, down to the wood nymphs, ringlets. As Jasmine says, we're going to see ringlets. We always see ringlets. We always see ringlets everywhere. And but it's still a very interesting butterfly. In fact, in our rearing this year, we discovered they had 4 instars. Most butterflies have 5 caterpillar stages that they develop through. This species only has 4. It doesn't seem to have been reported before in the literature. I'm re-rearing different populations in different places and still getting the same answer. They only have 4 instars, which is interesting. Wood nymph, flight period just beginning. Haven't seen many of them, seen a few this year. That's the pupa there on the left-hand side. We should see some of those, hopefully, but not many. And the small dark wood nymph, which is flying at Bethel Ridge, quite common, guaranteed. So that's what we'll see. I think we'll see a lot of those species, not everyone, but I'd be interested to see just how many we see that are predicted. Just a quick update on the book that you know that we're working on. It's a good picture of a California sister caterpillar. That's the face. We're still hoping for publication next year or the year after. We're still looking for a confirmed publisher. We've got a couple of leads, but the work is getting. We've done a lot of work on it this past winter. We're both getting exhausted, I think. Now we're still rearing the last few species that we have to rear. We're down to the last 10 or 12 serious ones that we need to do or want to do. And we'll get some of those. It's not going to be 99%, it's going to be 97, 98% complete coverage of the species in Washington and Northern Oregon and Southern British Columbia. So it's going to be exciting when it's published. And I was hoping for it to be published before next July, when the Lepidopterist Society, the national organisation, holds their annual meeting in Leavenworth. And for some reason I'm organising that meeting. Bob suggested I do it and I said yes.
So sorry.
Sillily. So thinking that maybe we can promote the book at the time. By God, we're still going to promote it. We may not be able to sell it at the time. We're still going to talk about it a lot. Because we believe that we can sell a lot of copies of this book because it's going to be pretty unique. And so that's the update on our book. Happy butterfly!